Hello everyone, my name is Anupama and I welcome you to Nagesh Karasgi Orchid School channel once again. Today I am here to teach you a lesson in English for grade 8 and the lesson number is 4, Bepin Chaudhary's Lapse of Memory. My dear children, we have already done with one session of this chapter. Today we are going to continue further with this lesson. So before we continue with this further session, I would like to recapitulate everything what we studied in earlier session. Dear children, the title itself tells about the main character of this chapter is Bepin Chaudhary, who is also named as Bepin Babu. What problem does Bepin Babu have? That he has forgotten an entire episode of his life. I even told you what a memory has to do in our life. It is so important because it helps us to recall everything, whatever we have learned, our experiences, instructions or our lifetime experience. But forgetfulness is very common, my dear children. Sometimes it happens to us, we keep some object somewhere and we don't find on time. And later on it is reminded that, oh, I had kept, but I did not recall that moment. So this is something very common. But what if you forget an entire episode of your life? This is like it will make you go crazy, it will make you go nuts. So this has happened with Bepin Babu in this story. Lapse is nothing but to forget one part or an episode of your life or any incident of your life. Now we have seen about this Bepin Babu initially. Who is he? How is he? About his habits, his behavior, his characteristics. Bepin was all alone. He was like an introvert character wherein he did not have lot many friends. Even we have seen his pastime hobby was to read many books. Every Monday he used to drop himself at Kali Charan market wherein he used to purchase few books that would last for a whole week. And what books he used to prefer to read? Those were crime books, ghost books, thrilling books, all these books wherein he entertained himself reading all those. He did not love to have idle chat with anyone, but the firm where he worked very promptly. Now in this story, we can see that one fine Monday, while he was returning back from his work to his house, he dropped himself as usual at Kali Charan market, where he was just observing few books wherein he can carry those books. At from distance place, he could see that there was one fellow who was constantly staring at him. And the moment when he noticed that guy, he introduced himself saying that he is Parimal Ghosh. When he introduced to Bepin Babu was left in surprise. He said he did not know him. And then Parimal Ghosh continued telling with all the things that were happened with him. What it was, he told that he had been to Ranchi in the year 1958. And then the moment when Bepin Babu heard this, he was in surprise because he had planned to be in Ranchi, but he couldn't. But then Parimal Ghosh, this fellow who was completely stranger for Bepin Babu, as if now he told that he was the fellow who arranged the car for complete whole week, and he took him to Hudro Falls as well. Therein at Hudro Fall, Bepin Babu had fallen and he got a cut on his right knee. He told everything, all the minute details of Ranchi trip. Whereas Bepin Babu continued saying that he had never been to Ranchi and he was damn sure about this. He even thought to tell some personal, some intimate details wherein Bepin Babu will all of a sudden recall or remember. He kept on telling that you had a wife who passed away 10 years back. You don't have children, as well as your brother died because of insanity. So hearing all these details were completely true that matched Bepin's personal life. But there was only one mistake, that he had never been to Ranchi in the year 1958, nor in his lifetime. And so the reason he kept on denying, he kept on telling Parimal Ghosh, nor he doesn't know Parimal Ghosh, nor he had never been to Ranchi. And then he told that when you were in Ranchi, you were accompanied with one of the friend whose name is Mr. Dinesh Mukherjee. He even told that he preferred to stay at bungalow wherein the food was being prepared and served by Bawarchi, because he did not love to have hotel food. He even told that he stayed for a week. Wherever the sightseeing he used to go, he used to carry a bag on his shoulders. The bag was with the books. And then at that moment, Bepin started to ponder about all those things, that how come I don't know this fellow, but he does know everything, all the minute details of this trip, as well as been to Ranchi, even my personal details also. And so the reason Bepin was thinking that whether this person is lying me or whether my memory is not helping me to recall this trip. And now we will see further what happens in this episode. My dear children, I request everyone to open page number 62 in your honeydew textbook. Be with pen or pencil in the hand, because I am going to read the chapter and make you understand difficult word meaning. Okay. Part 2, Bepin Chaudhary's Lapse of Memory. Let's begin. Bepin Babu's car was safely parked in Bertram Street by the Lighthouse Cinema. He told the driver as he got into the car, "Just drive by Ganga, will you, Sitaram?" So, we could see in the concluding part of last episode that when Parimal Ghosh, this fellow, kept on telling all the minute details to Bepin Babu and make him realize, make him believe that he had been to Ranchi in the year 1958, but at the end he left that place without replying, without responding to Parimal Ghosh, and which left Parimal Ghosh, who was utterly disbelief. Means he was completely surprised with all those expressions or the response that was been given by Bepin Babu. We could see initially that he had been to Kali Charan's new market where he is supposed to buy some books. So his car was parked at Bertram Street, which was nearby the Lighthouse Cinema. The moment when he got inside the cab, he requested his driver that can you take me to Ganga, and the name of the driver is Sitaram. So now why does he tell that he wants to go to Ganga? Because he was going completely crazy. All of a sudden this fellow had come, who Parimal Ghosh, who made him believe that he had been to Ranchi, wherein Bepin Babu kept on telling that he doesn't remember and never been to Ranchi ever in his life. And then we will see. Driving up the Strand Road, Bepin Babu regretted. Regretted means to feel sorry, feel disturbed, or even to feel grieved, having paid so much attention to the intruder. Intruder is no one but the one who disturbs you all of a sudden, or the unwanted visitor. So the moment when he sat inside the car, and then the moment when they left that place, Bepin was thinking, he was regretting on one thought, that why he had paid so much attention to an intruder. For him, who was the intruder? Parimal Ghosh. Because it happens to Bepin Babu that he doesn't know Parimal Ghosh, and so the reason he was quite sure that whatever the details he had given, though those were right, but the trip for Ranchi was absolutely a lie, or he has done some mistake. So he started to regret that why I paid that much of attention, why did I entertain that fellow to that extent. And then he had never been to Ranchi. No question about it. And then he started to talk to himself that he is quite sure, he is damn sure that he had never been to Ranchi, and there is no question to think about that, to ponder on all those details, those were given by Parimal Ghosh. It was inconceivable. Inconceivable means what? Something which is unbelievable, that he should forget such an incident which took place only 6 or 7 years ago. Now the moment when he himself started to talk, and then he started to answer all those questions those were arising in his mind, Then he thought he had never been to Ranchi, so there is no question to dwell on these things. But again there came one thought which was completely inconceivable, which was unbelievable for him. Why it was unbelievable? Because in the year 1958, where Parimal Ghosh told that he had been to Ranchi, that incident is something only 7 to 8 years before. And then how come this much was the only duration, and then how could he forget a trip to Ranchi? He had an excellent memory, and then this statement says that this fellow was quite serious in his life. The work he was being assigned in his office, that was very important work, and he never remembers that he has done any sort of mistake in his work. And so he says, he claims that he had an excellent memory, unless Bepin Babu's head reeled. Reeled means to get confused or shocked. So otherwise he had all the time excellent memory. His sense of humor was very good. But as if now this situation has made him go crazy. He was out of control because the thought made him think all the time that the fellow who made him believe that he had been to Ranchi, but he had never been to Ranchi. So he kept on thinking and thinking of that. And so the reason he was going crazy, he was going mad. And then, was he losing his mind? But how could that be? He was working daily in his office. It was a big firm, and he was doing a responsible job. As I told you that he had a good sense of humor. He had an excellent memory. He could recall everything. So is it that possible that now he has started to lose the memory? He has got with forgetfulness of habit? What it was exactly? Because this says that he was working daily in one of the office, and the job or the responsibility that was being assigned to Bepin Babu was one of the responsible duty or job. And he never remembers that he has done some silly mistakes wherein he was working in the firm. He wasn't aware of anything ever going seriously wrong. So even he talks to himself. He tries to ask few questions. I don't remember anything that I have done any mistake, any major mistake while I am working in my office, because I am assigned with a responsible duty. And then he says that I don't remember any serious mistake I have ever committed in my office also. Then how is that possible that I have forgotten a trip to Ranchi in the year 1958? Even he does remember that in the year 1958 he had been to Kanpur to perform one puja. So he was pretty sure about this. Only today he spoke for half an hour at an important meeting, and yet. So now this, he spoke for half an hour. To whom he spoke? What was the meeting? A meeting that happened with Parimal Ghosh, which lasted for half an hour. And that duration, that time, that period of time made him go mad. And he remembers everything, working in firm, having done with responsible work, and even never committed any serious or often anything which has gone wrong in his job. Only this half an hour of duration, and now it has made him to think and think, to go mad. And yet the man knew a great deal about him. How? So now he says that he is damn confident that he has never been to Ranchi. And then how is that possible to a stranger like Parimal Ghosh, whom he met for only half an hour, whom he doesn't know exactly who he is. He has never seen his face ever in his life. And then how come he knows each and every minute details of my life? So that was the big question, that how is that possible? He even seemed to know some intimate details, intimate as I told you, very personal details, as he kept on telling that he had a wife whom he lost 10 years back, as well as he did not have children. Even he had brother whom he lost because of insanity. So how come this fellow knows all my intimate is nothing but very personal details. The bag of books, wife's death, brother's insanity and so on. So all these details made him think that how come Parimal Ghosh knew everything. The only mistake, he says the only mistake, probably a deliberate lie. Deliberate means something intentionally or a purposeful lie. He thought that I am sure that I had never been to Ranchi, but this fellow knows everything. So probably he is making me to go crazy. And why he is making deliberately, he is doing this. He has got some purpose. I don't know why he is doing so. Who? Parimal Ghosh. But this is something, a purposeful act which is being done by Parimal Ghosh. And still he doesn't believe on his ridiculous talk. He says the only mistake was about having gone to Ranchi. So he says all the details, those were being mentioned by Parimal Ghosh, those were absolutely correct. But the only mistake from his side, whose side? Parimal Ghosh, that about having gone to Ranchi is something unbelievable. Not a mistake, a deliberate lie. In year 58, that is in the year 1958, during the puja, he was in Kanpur at his friend's Haridas Bagchi's place. So he recalls that where he had been. In the year 1958, he had performed one puja, whereas he was in Kanpur and he was accompanied with one of the friend whose name is Haridas Bagchi. All Bepin Babu had to do was write too. So now, when Parimal Ghosh told about all those witnesses and tried him to believe that he was been to Ranchi in the year 58, he recalled one incident that he had been in Kanpur for performing one puja. And who was the fellow accompanied with Bepin Babu? Was Haridas Bagchi. So he thought that I should write a letter to that fellow. But again, he reminds of something. No, there was no way of writing to Haridas. Again, he says that there is no question to write to Haridas. Bepin Babu suddenly remembered that Haridas had left with his wife for Japan for some weeks ago and he did not have his address. So all of a sudden, when he thought initially that he should write a letter to Haridas to confirm that whether he was in Kanpur in the year 1958 or whether he had been to Ranchi. Just for confirmation's sake, he thought he should write a letter. But all of a sudden, see, he could remember this. What he could remember, that only few weeks ago, Haridas had left with his wife for Japan. So he does remember this. So there is no question and he does not have his address. So how come he is going to write a letter to Haridas? And how come he is going to confirm that he had been to Kanpur and not to Ranchi? Let's see. But where was the need for proof? Again the question arises, but I am very sure that I had never been to Ranchi, so why there is need for a proof? He himself was fully aware that he had not been to Ranchi and that was that. So again one time he told himself, he convinced himself saying that there is no need for any witness, there is no need for any proof because he knows, he himself is a proof that he had never been to Ranchi and there is no need to ask any of. The river breeze was bracing and yet a slight discomfort lingered in Bepin Babu's mind. Dear children, underline the word breeze. Breeze is nothing but the wind which was bracing. Bracing means stimulating, which was regulating, it was refreshing. And yet a slight discomfort. Discomfort means feel something which makes you feel uneasy, uncomfortable. Lingered is nothing but stayed or continued in Bepin Babu's mind. So now when he had been to the banks of Ganga, wherein he was sitting there, he was just enjoying that scenario where the wind was bracing, it was rejuvenating, it was stimulating. The climate was so fresh, the atmosphere was quite pleasant to him. But at the same time, there were many thoughts those were coming on the mind of Bepin Babu, and so the reason at that moment, though the situation was so nice, the atmosphere, the surrounding was so pleasant, but there was some discomfort, there was some uncomfortness, something which was uneasy, making him to feel disappointed, because he was all the time thinking that he had never been to Ranchi. Around Hastings means nothing but near about. Bepin Babu decided to roll up his trousers and take a look at his right knee. So, at the very moment, later on, all of a sudden it reminded him one of the detail which was been given by Parimal Ghosh, that when Bepin Babu had been to Ranchi, he thought to go to Hudro Falls, wherein he had fallen there, and that time he got a cut on his right knee. So what he thought, that he'll roll up. Now in this picture you can see this fellow is sitting inside his car now, and now this is the pant, where in the moment when it reminds him that Parimal Ghosh told him that he had got a cut on his right knee, he thought that just to see, he rolled up his trouser, just to check that whether he has got really a cut on his right knee. And then there was the mark of an old inch long cut. So as the detail was been given by Parimal Ghosh, you can see on this right knee there is a long inch of cut. It was impossible to tell when the injury had occurred. So for Bepin Babu, it was very difficult to remember that when the injury took place, when the accident had taken place, and how come he got that mark on the knee. Had he never had a fall as a boy and cut his knee? He tried to recall such an incident but couldn't. So he tried to go and introspect everything in his childhood, that whether being as a boy, if he had fallen somewhere and he had got a cut on his knee. But it was not like that, because he couldn't remember even those childhood memories. Even that, something very strong that it helps, it makes him to remember for the long time. But this also he says, he denied, saying that he doesn't remember anything such of the incident had happened in his life. Then Bepin Babu suddenly thought of Dinesh Mukherjee. So who is this fellow, my dear children? Dinesh Mukherjee. Parimal Ghosh had told that when you had been to Ranchi in the year 1958, you were accompanied with one of the friend whose name is Dinesh Mukherjee. So now here is one more witness whom he can call and get all the details. The man had said that Dinesh was in Ranchi at the same time. The best thing surely would be to ask him. So he thought that let's go to Dinesh and get all the details whatever been told by Parimal Ghosh, just to ensure that whether he had really been to Ranchi in the year 1958. So he lived quite near, he was living quite near in Beninandan Street. What about going right now? But then if he had really never been to Ranchi, what would Dinesh think if Bepin Babu asked for a confirmation? So here the moment when thinks of Dinesh, he was staying nearby Bepin Babu's house. Where he was staying? He was staying at Beninandan Street. And then he thought that right now I should go to Dinesh and get all the confirmation that whether he had really been to Ranchi. And then again he thought that if I go to him and if I try to fetch the information or the confirmation that he had been to Ranchi, what Dinesh will think of me? He would probably conclude Bepin Babu was going nuts. No, it would be ridiculous to ask him. Underline the phrase going nuts means to go crazy, become mad. Ridiculous is something which is absurd or foolish. So he thinks that if I have been to Ranchi, if I believe whatever Parimal Ghosh had told that I had been to Ranchi, and if it is really true, and if it is confirmed by Dinesh Mukherjee, and if Dinesh Mukherjee finds me that been to Ranchi, why Bepin doesn't remember, This is the incident which took place only 6 to 7 years before, and he has come to me to ask this details. So what if Dinesh ridicules me? If he laughs at me, what would happen of me? He thinks like that. And he knew how ruthless means cruel, Dinesh's sarcasm could be. Now he knows that sarcasm is nothing but to make fun. So here we can see that this fellow Dinesh Mukherjee was a little funny sort of person. Probably if Bepin would ask to Dinesh that he had really been to Ranchi, and if it is true, then Dinesh would make fun of him. So he even thought of that. And sipping a cold drink in his air-conditioned living room, Bepin Babu felt at ease again. Such a nuisance. Nuisance is nothing but inconvenience. Just because they had nothing else to do, they go about getting into other people's hair. Dear children, please do underline this statement. They go about getting into other people's hair. So now he was back at his home. He was sitting in air-conditioned room, and while he was sipping cold drink, he thought about Dinesh Mukherjee and he dropped that idea as if for now. And then he says to himself that how foolish is this? How nonsense is this? Why I am paying my attention to Parimil Ghosh and the details whatever been given by him? Because he is sure again that he had never been to Ranchi. And then he states one statement that they go about getting into other people's hair means what? They have no other job, and so the reason they keep on interfering in somebody's personal life. Whom he is talking about? He is talking about Parimil Ghosh. You can find this meaning in the glossary. Getting into people's hair means interfering with and annoying people. Annoying means to make angry or to disturb someone. So next day in office, Bepin Babu noticed that with every passing hour, the previous day's encounter is the story, was occupying more and more of his mind. So every hour next day he was simply thinking of the last day's incident. The man knew, if the man knew so much about Bepin Babu, how could he make such a mistake about the Ranchi trip? So the fellow knew everything about Bepin Babu, but how he is making the mistake that he had been to Ranchi trip. Just before lunch, Bepin Babu decided to ring up means to call Dinesh Mukherjee. It was better to settle means to resolve the question over the phone. At least the embarrassment means the confusion or shame on his face would not show. So we know that if he would meet face to face Dinesh Mukherjee, and what if Dinesh Mukherjee would make fun of him, he thought that it is much better that I should call Dinesh and confirm with the details. So at least whatever the fun he will make, I will not be in front of me, he won't be able to see my facial expression. 235616. Bepin Babu dialed the number. The number was of Dinesh Mukherjee. Hello, is that Dinesh? This is Bepin here. Well, what is the news? I just wanted to find out if you recalled an incident which took place in 58. So now dear children, today what we have seen that finally the next day when he met Parimil Ghosh, of that next day when he had been to office, he was simply thinking about all those details those were given by a stranger. And then he thinks to call Dinesh Mukherjee and fetch all the information of the trip to Ranchi. And then we can see the conversation has started. So in the next episode, we will see that whether Dinesh Mukherjee even confirms that Bepin Babu was with him at Ranchi in the year 1958. We will find everything in detail in the next session. Till the time, take care. Bye-bye.